Well, hello once more, guys, gals, and whatever zombies that used to be subscribers. It's me, Zaniverse, in case you forgot. When we last talked about Dead Rising, I was stuck inside a shopping mall eating hot dogs out of a jar. I escaped into yet another shopping mall, but this time I've come prepared. I've taped several pieces of jewelry onto a flashlight, and somehow this makes a lightsaber, so that's pretty cool if I do say so myself. Speaking of taking random shit to make more random shit, we gotta talk about Dead Rising 2. So join me as I attempt to overanalyze my way through yet another goofy zombie game. Imagine, if you will, you're Capcom. Dead Rising did pretty good, got some good reviews, and you want to do a sequel. Well, you think to yourself, I could totally work with the same developers who helped me make the first game, and then improve upon all the aspects of the first game to deliver a delightful and interesting story that many people will cherish for years to come. Or I could totally scrap that idea and take a massive gamble, and that's exactly what Capcom did. They decided to work with another in-house developer, Blue Castle Games, which would then become known as Capcom Vancouver. Keiji Inafune was still involved in the game though, as well as other members of the original team. They wanted to take a gamble, and they wanted to do it right. The thing is, Capcom was banking on Dead Rising 2 to do really well. The game was announced on February 9th, 2009, after some rumors and a now defunct viral video showing off the game. It was supposed to be bigger and better than its predecessor. Capcom even pulled out some of the big guns and started marketing the game, doing one of those fancy ARG things all the kids are talking about. Websites like tapeitordie.com and visitfortunecity.com popped up advertising the game's location to the world. Keiji Inafune made an 8-part video series called Zombrex: Dead Rising Sun, and my personal favorite, Capcom sponsored a gathering of zombies outside of British Parliament, and the best dressed won a game console. And just in case you didn't think Capcom's mocking of the state of British politics was over, they even ran a political party called CURE, or Citizens for Undead Rights and Equality, as a parody of a British political party. The BBC says some of their campaign pledges include: give the undead equal rights to the living, make cemeteries more comfortable for their inhabitants, stop zombie racism, increase minimum retirement age for zombies, and legalize marriage between the living and the undead. Quite the list here. I'm surprised it didn't pass considering the actual zombies running the place. Aside from all those hilarious shenanigans, Dead Rising 2 is more of the same in a different location, with the game releasing on September 28, 2010, trading their shopping mall for a larger one and a casino. Because much like how Capcom changed developers to take a gamble, they also decided to change the location to Vegas, baby! I'll feel right at home here, since I've been fighting a gambling addiction ever since I discovered Counter-Strike trading cards. Dead Rising 2 starts off with Case Zero, which isn't Dead Rising 2 at all. It's actually a standalone DLC released in August of 2010 on Xbox Arcade, about a month before the initial launch of the second main game. It takes place in the small derelict town of Still Creek, about 2 years after the Willamette outbreak and 3 years before the Fortune City outbreak. This prologue introduces us to 2's protagonist, Chuck Green, and his 4-year-old daughter Katie after they have fled from the glamorous gambling capital of the world, Las Vegas, after a zombie outbreak started there. In it, Chuck lost his wife to the virus and had his daughter get bitten by his zombified wife. Tough break, but I'm sure things will only get better. This means she'll need Zombrex every 24 hours, a fun little plot device that definitely isn't extremely annoying to keep tabs on. The short 2-hour-ish prelude serves to introduce the player to the mechanics, controls, and gameplay of Dead Rising 2. Overall, there are pretty large similarities between the first and second game. Similarities being rescuing survivors and gaining PP, and differences being, of course, combo weapons, which are a new mechanic that allows the player to combine 2 items into one that's more powerful. There's only 9 available in Case Zero, instead of the usual 50, so I'll touch back on that later. There's also 10 survivors to find and rescue, which will help in leveling up Chuck, who can get up to level 5 before you start your main playthrough of Dead Rising 2. The game takes place over a 12-hour period, starting with Chuck arriving at the town in his truck, having his truck get stolen, and then finding and building a bike from scratch while helping out and doing favors for the town survivors. After collecting the required parts, as well as a dose of Katie Zombrex, we are confronted by Jed, the town's crazed scrap collector who wields a shotgun with a pitchfork attached to it. He serves as a great introduction to the absolute lunatics that we'll face throughout the course of the main game. After defeating him, we hop on our bike and speed off with the military hot on our tail. There's a short little post-ending stinger that sees Chuck find the truck from the start of the game, where he dons the, at this point, iconic yellow and black IJIC racing jacket before hopping on his bike, telling his daughter that he loves her, and driving off into the sunset. never ever having to kill any more undead ever again. Until now at least. We catch up with Chuck Green in the newly established Fortune City, a Las Vegas themed amusement and entertainment resort built after the fall of the real Las Vegas. The gameplay of Dead Rising 2 is rather largely the same compared to its predecessor. But there are however a decent amount of improvements and overall quality of life changes that do make the game a bit more enjoyable. Most notably, the transceiver system has been updated so that calls regarding psychopaths or survivors no longer need to be manually answered while you're out fighting the undead. Instead, these are just added to Chuck's quest log. The only calls you'll actually need to manually answer are the story related ones, and you can still skip through the dialogue. So, no more getting scolded by a geriatric security guard. The AI of survivors has also been greatly improved upon, with them now being able to actually defend themselves in a somewhat competent manner, and zombies even focusing on attacking the player instead of the actual survivors, making escorts much less tedious. Photographing in-game events is entirely absent on account that Chuck is not a photographer. The shooting mechanics are greatly improved, with Chuck being able to move around while shooting, making him a much harder target for zombies. Also improved are the vehicle mechanics, with them being noticeably less robust. You can also drive a wider variety of them, such as a Mini Cooper inside of the Royal Flush Plaza, and a Humvee located on the Silver Strip. A money system has also been implemented because this is fucking Vegas, baby. Of course there's a reason to collect a boatload of cash. Money can be earned through rescuing certain survivors, breaking ATMs, finding it inside of the casinos, and just by caving in and playing one of the hundreds of slot machines and other gambling related minigames. The HUD also received a slight makeover, with it being made to look a lot more dirty, giving off this almost decomposing vibe. Chuck Swatch is also digital, so you no longer need a mathematics degree in order to read it. Another new mechanic that I quickly touched on earlier is the aforementioned Zombix medication. This scarcely available and overpriced experimental drug is what stops anyone who's been previously bitten from turning, including Katie. There's however one little caveat to this experimental drug. You need to take it once every 24 hours on the dot in order to stop yourself from turning into one of the flesh eaters. Zombix can be acquired through a few different methods. Certain survivors will give you a dose upon rescuing them, but you can also find them around the resort in some hard to reach places. Or if that sounds like too much effort, you can also just buy a dose for 25 grand inside of one of the pawn shops. Pawn shops also sell a random assortment of items and combo weapons. But what are combo weapons? Combo weapons are rather self-explanatory, as they let the player combine two items together that would otherwise not be very effective, into a much more effective, durable, and lethal weapon. Each one of these weapons also lets the player earn PP in a much more effective way. I do however have a few issues with this system. Combo weapons are only able to be crafted on workbenches located inside of the resort's maintenance rooms, besides the one that's actually en route to the safe house, meaning you'll constantly have to go out of your way in order to craft more combo weapons, since they are undoubtedly the best way to defeat psychopaths and cull the undead hordes. Another downside of the system is that due to the in-game clock, you really can't spend that much time looking around for a specific item to make a specific combo weapon. And since items spawn in a set location and aren't random RNG based drops, you're largely restricted to whatever items you either find a dozen times within 100 feet, or the ones that are always located near or inside the maintenance rooms. This is also why 90% of my gameplay is comprised of spiked bats, since you can find enough items to craft like 4 of them within a minute of leaving the safe house. However, you're not supposed to just randomly combine some items and hope you get a working combination, as the game will reward you with combo cards which show you the required items for your weapon. 34 can be unlocked by just leveling up, 4 by saving survivors, 2 by defeating certain psychopaths, and 8 by finding and inspecting in-game movie posters. And then there's also the Spiked Bat, which acts as an introductory combo weapon, and the Wingman, which is a secret item purely for an achievement. You can also prove how good of a dad you are by bringing Katie an assortment of neat items that children would enjoy, I guess. I don't know, I'm not a child. Human enemies also make a return for some additional PP farming. Their variety is however a lot more limited, as besides your usual psychopaths, there's looters, who are essentially just dudes with a melee item that go down in 2 to 3 hits. Lastly, I want to quickly run over the map and its layout. It's honestly a massive improvement over the first game, with each location having its own theme, style, and personality. First off is the Americana Casino, an American-themed casino complete with a barbecue and steak restaurant. Next up is the Atlantica Casino, which is an ocean-themed casino featuring Poseidon statues, treasure chests, and massive seashells. Thirdly, there's the Slot Ranch Casino, home to the largest slot machine in the game, capable of payouts up to $100,000. As well as the single greatest money farming minigame ever conceived. And lastly, the Yucatan Casino is an Aztec-themed one, complete with tiki torches and stone statues. There's also like a dozen malls, plazas, and other shopping-related locations to explore, but that's about enough rambling for now. Let's talk about what I actually got up to during my playthrough. Chuck is here to compete in a new event of Terror is Reality, a game show in which contestants kill zombies in order to rack up points. After a brief cutscene, we are introduced to the absolute grandiose scale that this entire game just emanates. The larger scale does allow for a much more insane cast of characters, as well as an expansive cast of survivors and psychopaths. We then participate in a game of Slicicles, where 4 contestants drive around an arena in order to run zombies over on a motorcycle with a pair of chainsaws attached. TIR is also playable with your friends as an entirely separate mode. You and up to 3 of your friends can compete in 9 different event modes such as Ballbuster, Master Shafter, and the ever iconic Slicicles. I never got to play any of these since nobody seems to own this game on PC, but the servers are still up for it, nearly a decade later. Pretty impressive. Nobody owning this game on PC might also have to do with the fact that this game is not a fan of modern computer systems, instead wanting to actively kill your computer. Saving your game by taking a leak returns from the original, and after doing so, getting teased by women equally crazy as they are hot, shit hits the fan as we are involuntarily thrust into the Fortune City outbreak. It isn't time for copious amounts of zombie killing just yet, however, instead rescuing our daughter, leaving the arena, and making our way towards the nearby emergency shelter with a dozen other people. It's here we're introduced to our supporting cast, or at least a few of them, these being Raymond Sullivan, a Fortune City security guard, and Stacy Forsythe, which is more on the nose than that one Japanese game with the footballers.
Ray McScriff, Dean Wesry, Glenn Allen Mixon, Mike Truck, Mario McElwain.
After talking to Stacy, we're sent on our first Zombix run for Katie, going to a nearby pharmacy in order to find some. But instead of finding some less than friendly looters, we casually commit manslaughter before talking to the nurse, receiving Zombix as a reward and taking her back to the safe house. It's here that you truly get to experience the absolute peak of AI. I mean, holy fuck. One could only dream of saving someone at level 1 in the first game. So, I spend a few minutes just standing about until it's 7 AM before shooting Katie up with some dubious substance. We watch a news broadcast where Rebecca Chang tells us that this wasn't an accident, but instead a full-on terrorist attack. And Chuck Green's responsible in this camera footage, that I can't show you because my cutscene conveniently froze. So, we head out to find Rebecca, but before we do, Ray gives us a key to access the maintenance rooms, allowing us to create combo weapons. One cool building montage later and I'm ready to give skulls in like it's the season 7 premiere of The Walking Dead all over again. So I save a man and his wife, save a shotgun wielding man and his gun toting wife, and then get these 2 casino employees to join my party. We meet up with Rebecca, who proves herself quite capable of handling a gun, a camera, and an uncomfortable amount of sexual tension. Chuck promises her an interview in exchange for the opportunity to prove his innocence. As can be expected, we make it to the security room and find all the camera footage has been destroyed, as well as the technicians their heads. We then run back to the safe house, getting into an argument with Ray as he tries to force our daughter out of the safe house. We also manage to convince him of our innocence, for now at least. We're then given a good 10 hours before the next main story case unlocks, allowing us to explore the resort and complete a set of the available missions. One thing I will give this game is that there's a lot more forgiving with its clock system, giving you clear windows of opportunity to go out and rescue survivors, instead of getting absolutely swamped like in its predecessor. I go out to meet my first pair of survivors, these being Kenneth, a rootin' tootin' army veteran, and Jack, a tier 3 Amaranth sub. So we tell him to shut the fuck up and follow us to the safe house, picking up this old blind woman for good measure. Man, this game's fucking easy. Stacy tells us about some suspicious activity happening in the maintenance tunnels, these being goons with guns. So we go to check it out, but not before doing a few more side quests, the first one being Meet the Contestants, which has us fight Leon Bell, a Terror is Reality contestant who went insane due to the outbreak.
Buddy, I heard you lost your wife in Vegas. I guess you suck at killing zombies, otherwise she'd still be around!
Actually, he might have always just been a prick. Leon is by far the most frustrating opponent to take down at this point in the game. Largely because you're a low level, with an equally low amount of health and stamina, but he's at least nice enough to hand us a key for a bike. Leon's fight is, well, a bit frustrating. largely due to the fact that he's armed with a motorcycle, and you aren't. This fight took me about 10 minutes, but it could have taken longer if he hadn't gotten stuck on this wall, allowing me to get some cheap hits in. He does rob us of the satisfaction of killing him, instead preferring to die by self-immolation. Barnburner sees us save a couple from a fire of their own making, before then saving this luscious lady, who's also an alcoholic. Whatever helps you cope, I suppose. We then go save Sven, a paramedic. I also go to save Jared, but he tells us he's been bitten, so he'd like some Zombrex before joining us. Upon saving Sven, he gives us a dose of Zombrex, which he couldn't have just given to Jared beforehand. What a dick. So then, I finally decide to go continue the main quest, going into the maintenance tunnels to find a small army of mercs as well as TK, who would have known. The guy who looks like a stereotypical gangster is the bad guy. So we have an action movie chase scene down the tunnel before jumping onto the train, killing a bunch of mercs before catching up to TK, who just laughs at us and disconnects it. I take a quick detour and get another dose of Zombrex that I definitely didn't look up on the internet, give a dose to Jared and another to Katie. I then do some needlessly frustrating platforming, largely because the clunky movement system clearly wasn't designed with the concept of pixel narrow jumps in mind. I do eventually make it, getting another dose of Zombrex, about $1,000 in cash, and a sword for good measure. That's a neat little tool that'll come in handy later. And by soon, I mean right now. I go to a bathroom to take a leak, but instead run into Brandon, a radical shard of glass wielding cure protester. Brandon is one of the faster psychopaths in the game, yet he's still easily beatable if you have a functioning frontal lobe. Next up, it's time for Boomtown, where it's revealed that TK is using the outbreak as a cover-up to rob and loot all of the casino vaults for some of that sweet paper. So I go out, save a trio of rock artists, a duo of construction workers, and a solo woman as well, before then fighting what I would imagine to happen to Gordon Ramsay if he were ever caught in a zombie outbreak. Chef Antoine is this extremely annoying, extremely fast, and extremely French chef. His special gimmick is that he has a frying pan, and that he can literally heal himself infinitely, meaning you can't really take your time fighting him. For being in a kitchen, there's a surprising lack of food to heal yourself with. So little in fact that I had to literally leave the boss fight in order to get more from the restaurant next door. We then go do the next case, which involves me killing groups of mercs as well as destroying their drills which they're using to get into the vaults. Finally, I always wanted to play Payday 2 as the cops. So I break an armored van, TK throws a fit, and she finally allows us to meet her source. We then meet a man named Janus, who's just been gambling since the start of the outbreak. Absolute Sigma. Get your money up, king. Upon saving him, he gives me a small loan of $70,000. I also save a golfer in the process. I then go to meet Slappy, the character that's single-handedly responsible for not allowing 14-year-old me to finish this game. Not only is his mask absolutely terrifying, he's also such a fucking pain to fight as he roller skates around while firing a pair of makeshift flamethrowers. Now, I genuinely think this fight is impossible if you yourself didn't bring a gun of some sort, since being hit by his fire results in getting stun locked. I was only able to beat him because he fell down to the lower floor, and I found this handy shotgun. I then go to meet Rebecca's source, but am instead ambushed by the two femme fatales from the start of the game. Now, I'm not one to kink shame, but once you start involving knives in the bedroom, I'm out. Amber and Crystal are definitely a dynamic duo, but they're not too hard to handle due to the copious amounts of alcohol strewn about the dance floor, and you only gotta defeat one of them for the other to just forfeit the match. It also comes with an absolute banger of a team, which is also the only one that won't get me copyright struck. Afterwards, we go fight another psychopath, this one being Randy, a chainsaw-wielding, pig mask-wearing gimp fanatic. He's trying to forcefully marry this woman named Danny, and that's not poggers. Upon defeating him, we are rewarded with a pretty cool unique weapon. I then go to fight Carl, a crazed UPS mailman who will make sure you get your package on time, even if he has to kill to make sure of it. Fuck, if only Hell Farm mailmen were as dedicated to the cause. I wouldn't have to wait over a month for a fucking hoodie. After defeating him, I go out to fetch females.
Bar, please have a seat right here.
But before doing so, I get challenged to a high-stakes game of poker.
I have no clue how to play poker.
But it's fine because I can just murder them and move on with my life. I fetch the aforementioned females by giving them 10 grand of my hard-stolen cash. Man, Chuck's really fallen off. I proceed to gamble to pass the time, which is the best reason to gamble really, before then giving Katie another shot of Zombrex. I then go out to rescue a hungry man before then helping Woodrow withdrawing some cash from the nearby ATMs. Remember guys, it isn't illegal if you aren't the one directly committing the crime. The game then adds a little more spice to the Platinum Strip by adding these 4 sniping rednecks to some of the rooftops who'll continually take pot shots at you if you find yourself traversing their territory. Each one of them comes with their own sniper rifle, as well as a melee weapon if you get too close for their comfort. Fighting them is actually pretty entertaining, as when you do, they start spouting off a whole bunch of pro-gun, pro-freedom rhetoric, but once you do defeat the first one, you can use their sniper against the next one, and so on. So I dispatch Johnny, Derek, and Big Earl, glitch hopping for a bit and then taking out the gang's leader, Deets.
Deets nuts.
I then play some more poker and it goes about as well as you'd expect. Actually, it ended even worse, as I ended up with a lot less clothes on. I chuck on my threads again, forgetting about the shoes, and then talk to a woman, who only wants to join me if I strip down to my boxers. Again. But not before fighting Seymour, a mall cop wielding a 6-shooter capable of disarming you with his eagle eye levels of accuracy. He's actually one of the easier bosses in the game, going down in like a dozen hits. So, I take off my clothes again, find Ray who was hiding out from Mr. High Noon before rescuing both him and Europa. I then meet Randolph, a man who won't stop crying because nobody will ever buy his piss poor art. I chuck him a few grand because I have terrible money management skills. Oh, that got a bit too real there. I go steal a golf club for Luz, ride a bull, and rescue Dean, a limping army veteran who refuses to be carried or even supported. 0 out of 10, most annoying survivor so far. I then go find a man who truly lives by the quote, 99% of all gamblers quit right before hitting it big. He'll only join me after I fork over 20,000 of my hard-earned cash, with an additional 5k on top because he's a bit of a greedy prick. We then meet Bibi, a busty MILF who tasks us to collect a whole bunch of stuff. After doing so, she seemingly soft locks herself in place, refusing to follow us or even move at all. So I cut my losses and rescue the other 3 as well as the shotgun wielding Bill. The main story reels its time crunch head around again and we meet with Rebecca on the roof, discovering that TK is trying to escape using this gif of a helicopter. We make it to the roof, killing zombies and mercs alike before then having a face-off with the literal helicopter, which we defeat by throwing items into its rotor until it blows up, including the money. Real shame. I could have used that, to be honest. At this point, there's about 12 hours left before you're rescued by the military, so I gotta move on and rescue a mermaid, a shell-shocked survivor, and 2 comedians.
Okay, get ready to laugh. What does a vegan zombie eat? Grains. Grains, get it?
And then fighting 2 morally dubious Cirque du Soleil musicians with anger issues. They're a cool duo and reward you with one of the more fun combo weapons. So, we save a feuding family, give Katie even more dubious narcotics, and then the military rolls up. Or well, the anti-zombie unit to be more specific. Led by this bald pitbull looking dude, Sergeant Dwight Boykin. Naturally, as should be expected with any sort of military force in any sort of zombie media, they get wiped the floor with within only a few minutes. The zombies now come with a new variant. Gas zombies are a new type of zombie, looking a lot more diseased and deadly. They usually take a few more hits, even from combo weapons, and are capable of moving faster, spitting blood on their targets to stun them, and if they manage to grapple onto you, can absolutely destroy your health bar if you manage to mess up the QTEs. We then go fight Boykin, who's gone completely insane, talking to his dead comrades and shooting at anything that moves, alive or undead. It's honestly one of the darker scenes in this game, seeing a hardened soldier completely lose his mind at the sight of his entire unit and friends getting torn limb from limb. Anyways, that's enough intelligent writing for one video. Now to shoot him and rescue Rebecca. After doing so, we go talk to TK, who says that Chuck would have been the perfect guy to take the fall, on account of his wife dying and all that. We're having a fun little chat in the security room, and before we know, zombies somehow manage to break into our crib. This part has you collect a generator, a gasoline barrel, and a comedically large spool of wire to hotwire a panel. This is also a race against the clock, as all your rescued survivors are here, actively fighting for their lives, and the longer you take, the more of them will die. We then hack the panel in the least hacky way possible, by literally just spamming spacebar. TK gets bit by a single zombie because plot, and we watch a news report where they say that the military has made it to the shelter, finding everyone already dead. How American. The group theorizes that TK is just a pawn in a much bigger game, knowing that it's impossible for him to make military level commands, i.e. firebombing an entire city and all that. The only one that isn't fully on board by the end is Sullivan. At this point, we're also tasked with getting Zobrix for TK. However, I figured that if I beat the game before his time runs out, I won't have to worry about it. So we look at some more camera footage and discover that the gas is coming from the underground of the city. We head on down there only to find a full-on military organized zombie harvesting operation. That's right, the only way to make Zombrex is by collecting queen bees, much like Frank had to do in the first game. So, we kill a bunch more dudes and find the laptop with a very messy desktop, like Jesus Christ, can you please sort out those icons? We get the laptop back to the safe house and discover a company named Phenotrans is behind the outbreak. A pharmaceutical company that produces Zombrex. What? A company starting a pandemic in order to up their stock? Alex Jones is right. Rebecca attempts to call her station but gets 1D'd by Sullivan, revealing that he was on Phenoltrans's payroll the whole time. How shocking. We chase Sullivan to the rooftop of the Yucatan Casino, where we have a 1v1 with a laser-accurate boomer. Seriously man, he's gotta be fucking aimbotting since he literally doesn't miss. While fighting him, there's also an airplane, shooting rockets down at us, capable of blowing holes into the rooftop, making it much harder to move around. You can even get knocked down onto the lower levels of the casino. Overall, this is a pretty cool final boss, on account that I actually had to fight him instead of him completely bugging out and getting hounded by zombies. Sullivan might be a middle-aged man, but he still got moves, capable of sending Chuck flying through the air like a ragdoll. After beating him, Sullivan attempts to leave via skyhook, but we tie him to the roof, literally tearing him a new asshole. We then call Rebecca's news station, asking for a rescue. A few days later, all of the survivors have been rescued, but Katie forgets her backpack, and Chuck refuses to leave without it because of sentimental values. Chuck is then ambushed by a zombified TK, pinning him to the ground as he allows Stacy and Katie to leave. We then get some more post-game text screens. It's said that the safe house survivors were rescued, Chuck Green was cleared of all charges, despite having gone missing, and that Phenoltrans, despite the controversy, kept their stock prices thriving. Now, this wasn't ending S, this was ending A, which has since been proven to be the canon one since it lines up with Dead Rising 2's second DLC, Case West. Ending S, the best ending, requires you to complete every case, but also give TK the Zombricks he needs before finishing the game, i.e. the only thing I forgot to do. It starts the exact same way, with all the survivors getting on the chopper and Chuck heading back to find Stacy and Katie, only to find out TK escaped and is now holding them hostage. He tasks us to collect a bunch of items before heading to the arena from the start of the game, where we fight TK on the light rig above the terrorist reality grounds. We also have to continuously crank an elevator up to stop the aforementioned duo from dropping down into the crowd of zombies. After defeating him, Chuck throws him over the edge with a pretty banger one-liner.
If you're ever really gonna win big.
I'm actually pretty happy that I didn't have to fight this guy, as all the YouTube videos I could find of him made the encounter look like an absolute pain in the ass. Ending B is unlocked if you fail any cases after 6-1, or fail to defeat Sullivan during the climax. Both will result in the city being firebombed. Ending C is earned if the player fails a case before 6-1, but keeps Katie alive with Zombrax and is inside of the safe house when the military arrives. This one results in everyone being killed by Sullivan in order to stop the truth from being spread. Ending D needs the player to complete every case up until the military arrives, but be caught outside of the safe house. This will result in Chuck getting captured by the soldiers. And lastly, Ending F, in which you just forget to care for your daughter, letting her turn. Let me roll it back a few minutes though, back to when I said Case West. This DLC starts off right where Ending A left off, with Chuck having a tussle with the undead TK himself. He's however rescued by everyone's favorite war journalist, Frank West. Frank tells us that he's got a source at a secret military facility. It's also revealed that he's still reliant on Zombrex to stop himself from turning. Nice continuity. So, this DLC has our duo fight their way through the facility in a 2-hour-long adventure. Co-op is also available for this, much like the base game. But there's less reality breaking since one of the players is now Chuck, and the other, Frank. Your base game progress also carries over, allowing you to keep your special attack moves, level, and some of your health. During the DLC, you'll fight a lot more armed guards than you're used to. They are also capable of throwing flashbangs, stunning the player. There's even mini-bosses in the form of the Juggernaut looking fellas. Both of the main characters now come equipped with a camera that they can use to photograph objects of interest for some bonus PP. Throughout the DLC, we find a whole bunch of story mumbo-jumbo, evidence clearing Chuck of his crimes, as well as blueprints for the Fortune City Queen harvesting operation. After a while, we make it to an experimental lab where we run into Frank's source, who is revealed to be Isabella Keys. She explains that she isn't willingly working with them before we then come face to face with the Bollywood-looking commander of the facility. After easily defeating him on account of having about a dozen overpowered firearms, the big bad then tells us some generic shit about zombie bad, but humanity worse, before blowing up the facility, and our pair of heroes begrudgingly leaving without finding their cure. And that's Dead Rising 2. It's definitely a lot lengthier, in-depth and more fleshed out than the first game, on account of the bigger budget and larger development team I'd imagine. Regardless, I absolutely loved going back to a game that I first played before I even made an actual PSN account. I definitely preferred 2's gameplay over its predecessor, as the combo weapons, while silly, definitely add a lot more replayability to the game. Its cast of psychopaths was also a lot more out there than a majority of the first game. The story was also a lot longer and fleshed out. While still being a bit corny, there were definitely some good twists in it that I didn't see coming. I give this game and all of its DLC a very clean-shaven 7 solies out of 10. Hey there, thanks so much for watching this way overdue video. I only missed the anniversary by about a month, which is pretty good for my track record. On a more serious note though, thank you all for the support, very cool. Big shout out to ToughGamingGuy for allowing me to yoink his Case Zero and Case West footage. Check out his channel down below. As always, if you enjoyed, leave a like, a comment, and subscribe, as I have 199 more videos scheduled for release between now and the inevitable heat death of the universe. Also, if you enjoyed listening to my voice, may I suggest listening to my voice on a different channel. Me and a bunch of other YouTubers made a podcast channel, and the first episode should be out now. Link to the episode is down below. I've been Xanivus, and I've got a scoop to find.